cause for alarm. On this warm July day in 1785, America was at peace, and there were many innocent reasons for a friendly ship to come alongside. Perhaps it was a fellow merchant ship needing information or supplies. Perhaps the ship's captain wanted to warn him of nearby pirates. By the time O'Brien realized that the ship did not approach in peace, it was too late. The American ship was no match for the Algerian vessel armed with 14 cannons. A raiding party with daggers gripped between their teeth swarmed over the sides of the Dauphin. The Algerians vastly outnumbered the American crew and quickly claimed the ship and all its goods in the name of the Dey, the Algerian ruler. Mercilessly, the pirates stripped O'Brien and his men of shoes, hats, and handkerchiefs, leaving them unprotected from the burning sun during the 12-day voyage back to the North African coast. On arrival in Algiers, the American captives were paraded through the streets as spectators jeered. The seamen were issued rough sets of Algerian clothing and 2 blankets each that were meant to last the entire period of captivity, whether it was a few weeks or 50 years. Kept in a fenced-in slave pen, they slept on a stone floor, gazing into the night sky. Each night there was a roll call, and any man who failed to respond promptly would be chained to a column and whipped soundly in the morning. Together with men of another captured ship, the Maria, O'Brien's Dauphin crew spent their days breaking boulders into rubble in the mountains, their hands shackled with iron chains. They worked this way Saturday through Thursday. On Friday, the Muslim holy day, the prisoners dragged massive sleds loaded with rubble nearly 2 miles to the harbor to be unloaded into the sea to form a breakwater, a submerged wall to protect the harbor from ocean waves. Their workdays began before the sun rose, and for a few blissfully cool hours they worked in darkness. Their diet consisted of stale bread, vinegar from a shared bowl at breakfast and lunch, and on good days some ground olives. Water was the one necessity provided in abundance. As a ship captain, O'Brien was treated somewhat better, but he feared that his men would starve to death. O'Brien was allowed to write letters and receive visitors. "Our sufferings are beyond our expression or your conception," O'Brien wrote to America's minister to France, Thomas Jefferson, 2 weeks after his arrival in Algiers. Those sufferings would only get worse. Several of the captives from the Maria and the Dauphin would die in captivity of yellow fever, overwork, or exposure. And in some ways, they were the lucky ones. The ways out of prison for the remaining prisoners were few: convert to Islam, attempt to escape, or wait for their country to negotiate their release. A few of the captives would be ransomed, but for most, freedom remained out of reach as their thin blankets wore out year after year. Richard O'Brien would be 10 years a slave. America had not yet elected its first president, but it already had its first enemy. Part 1. Chapter 1. 1783. Wealth Travels by Sea. The United States, having won independence from Great Britain in the Revolutionary War, was a small nation positioned from the coast of the Atlantic Ocean on the east to the Great Lakes to the north and to the Mississippi River on the west. The land claimed by the new nation was the property of the native peoples who had lived on it for generations. Some of this land had been bought, some had been fought over, most had been taken unceremoniously. In addition, Spain claimed territory to the south and west of the country, as did Great Britain to the north. Before the Revolution, merchant ships carrying goods to sell in Europe had been protected by British warships and, during the war, by French ships. But those arrangements were over. Now American ships had to fend for themselves, and the new country did not yet have a navy. The Revolution had been fought with money borrowed from France and the Netherlands, and repayment of those debts depended upon ongoing international commerce. One key piece of the nation's economic health was trade with southern Europe, accessible only by sailing across the Atlantic Ocean through the Strait of Gibraltar and into the Mediterranean Sea. 1/4 of